So we'll dive right in and make the most of our time this morning. My name is Sam Moody. I'm Associate Director of the Colorado Media Project. I'm so pleased to welcome you all here this morning and to introduce Sally Lehrman and the Trust Project. We're excited to share this opportunity to help Colorado newsrooms get to know the Trust Project and the Trust Indicators and how you can use these tools to build trust and relationships with your audiences and communicate to people, your readers, your listeners, your viewers, very effectively what standards, practices, and best practices you use that really define your newsroom as trustworthy and an excellent source of information and local news. If we've got I'll just mute there. We're happy to share this opportunity as a part of a broader set of statewide initiatives. I know several folks on this call are already involved in the Above the Noise community listening engagement initiative being led by the Colorado Press Association and Rocky Mountain Public Media. And similarly with the Voter Voices statewide audience citizens agenda survey that's being run in the state with being led by the Colorado Press Association. And we see all of these are elements of how tools and resources that newsrooms can use to build their relationships with their audiences and deepen their engagement with their communities. And if you have any questions, if you're not aware of Above the Noise or the Voter Voices, please flag that as a question for our Q&A session, or just reach out to me. I'll drop my email in the chat, and I'd be happy to connect you with those two projects. I think with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sally, the founder of the Trust Project, to introduce herself, the Trust Project and the Trust Indicators, just so you all have a sense of what we're going to do today. Sally's going to give an overview of the Trust Project and how to use the Trust Indicators, the kinds of support that is available for Colorado newsrooms this year from her organization to implement these. We'll then have, she's not in yet, but she'll be joining shortly, Dana Caulfield from the Colorado Sun, share a little about the Sun's experience. They're here she is. They're one of the newest newsrooms to implement the Trust Project, Trust Indicators this year. So she'll share a little bit about the Trust's reasoning and strategy and what that experience was like for them. Hi, Dana. We're just giving a little promo of what you're going to be sharing later.
So much.
Thank you. And then we'll just hold a lot of space for your questions. So as we're going through, if you have any questions, feel free to drop it right in the chat, and we'll make sure we get to those when we wrap up at the end. And with that, Sally, very pleased to hand it over to you.
Yes, thanks, Sam. And so great to see all of you today. And thanks so much for your interest in the Trust Project. As Sam said, I'm founder and CEO of the Trust Project. I'm a longtime journalist working across multiple types of media, mainly in the areas of covering business and science and social issues related to science. I also have a long background in working in areas of diversity in the news. So kind of out of that background came the Trust Project. Before I tell you a teeny bit about that, I want to introduce Jessica Sterling, who is our operations manager. And if you were to, and Sam, you're in the waiting room again, but if Jessica and I and the rest of our team would be working closely with you if you were to participate. So I think it's, first of all, it's so great that Colorado Media Project is doing these various programs in Colorado. And I hope you know that as a state, you really are a place where people are looking to kind of get a sense of how media can continue to grow and thrive and really connect with your communities. So that's why it's a special pleasure for me to be here today, as well as I myself have roots in Colorado. Both my parents were born in Denver. So anyhow, the reason I started the Trust Project had to do with the fact that in the digital environment, news really gets lost and it looks so much like everything else. Like, it's very hard to tell the difference. And this was early on when we were first moving into the digital environment. And I can't say I think we made some mistakes at that time, like kind of going toward the clickbait or merging news with opinion to try to have a voice. And as a result, we we lost audience instead of gaining it, and kind of started looking more like everything else. And as a result, trust declined, and into that gap kind of flooded what we now talk about a lot as misinformation, but could be broken into actual propaganda, foreign interference, rumors, just people passing on errors or mistakes. So what has happened in our research, we found that, and others have found this too, there is a a sense that people are gaining that they just don't know where to turn. There's a lot of anxiety about what the news itself. The news itself can be very distressing, what's happening in the world. And then there's also a lot of concern about, in this world of so much misinformation, we know people are learning more and more about it. Then they feel like, well, maybe they'll get caught up in it. Maybe they'll accidentally believe something that's not true, or maybe they'll accidentally share it and pass it on and become part of the problem. So what we see is people, that term news avoidance. We see people turning away from news, and it's part of anxiety. It's about fear. It's about, isn't it easier just to get my news from something, talking to my neighbor, or something like my email or next door, something like that, where you're just hearing from people who maybe there's some trust there because they're your neighbors, but there's no journalistic rigor behind it at all. But people don't know that. So this is why I think your work above the noise, that listening project, is so important. What we're trying to do is help you show on your sites the ways in which you are different. So really differentiate news from all the other kinds of information that is flooding at people. And it's on the news site. And for those of you who are in public radio, I see there's a lot of folks here. It's also what you can do on the air. And we have right now several public radio stations, or one group in the Midwest and a station in the Northwest that are coming into the Trust Project. We also have Public News Service, which is they provide news little short news, 5-minute news broadcasts for radio stations around pretty much in every state in the country. So what I want to do is show you a few things. I have a small deck of slides, and then I want to show you some sites so you can see what it looks like. And I kind of gave you the grounding already, but with your permission, let me share this. And I'm going to share. Okay, so yes, I hope you will join us in this work. And let me find my little thingy here. Okay, so I gave you a bit of the context already. We have this propaganda kind of flooding into the gap here, and just fakery and sales pitches. I'm sure you've seen more and more of that too, which builds this uncertainty and mistrust, which then makes it harder for us to serve the public interest, because it harms the revenue streams. So what is our mission? It is to amplify journalism's commitment to transparency, accuracy, inclusion, and fairness, so the public can make informed news choices. So you can see, like, this is very much in alignment with what the journalistic mission is to begin with. So how do we do this? And it's structural. So you're building one-on-one relationships with your audiences. We hope to help you build structure into your site, into your broadcast, that in a light way for the broadcast, that will help people know that you are a trustworthy news organization. So what we have developed are these 8 trust indicators, and they're provided to the public through your UX, through your voice sometimes. And then there's also machine readable signals associated with everything. And that is because the technology platforms really need help, as you know, surfacing trustworthy news. So helping them identify when it's coming from a source that has put all these trust indicators on their sites. And it's built into the code. This is built in through schema. If you do any SEO work or the coding side of it, that word would resonate, because that is the language that is used by these big platforms to sort news, and sometimes in their rater guidelines. So we worked with them to develop a terminology, a lexicon for news, and that's what all related to the trust indicators. So now we are about just short of 300 news organizations. And if you were to participate, you would be part of, like, we're represented in every state in the United States, every province in Canada, these 4 countries in Latin America, soon to be more, and all these parts of Europe, as well as Hong Kong. And Europe was growing as well. So it's really a global system, and it's a global system. The reason for that, like the reason it matters, I feel, to bring everybody together, is because you create a systemic way of showing this is what trustworthy news looks like. And there are, of course, the fundamentals are the same, or maybe you may not think, of course, immediately, but what we are finding is that they are the same, that really the trust indicators do hold up quite well across all these different places. And so we're all showing the same things to our users. Now, what makes us different? I think this is going to show up in the wrong order, so bear with me here. But the first thing is we really have proven impact. When we first did this, the Center for Media Engagement studied the trust indicators, and they did an A/B experiment, and they found that, in fact, when the indicators are present, it does elevate the people's perceptions of your news site, as well as the individual journalist. And we've also done previous or additional studies that have found that I have to agree to this being recorded. Sorry. We have found that the Trustmark logo, which I'll show you in a minute, that also affects people's perspectives in a very positive way. And these are all statistically significant differences. The second thing is platforms integrate the trust indicators I talked a little bit about in the markup. They also work with us in terms of really understanding what trustworthy news looks like in order to, for the human side of the equation there. One thing that's really important that I want to highlight is that it is based in user-centered design research. So this isn't a set of principles that just like popped out of my head or an academic's head. It is something that we learned kind of along the same lines that you will be learning about your audiences in the Above the Noise listening sessions, because I heard about them and they sound really great. So we went out and talked to people about what it is that they value in the news. How do they decide whether to trust it? What is it, even their fears about the news? Why don't they engage with it? And out of that came the 8 trust indicators. And I'll give you a little bit more detail on that in a second. It's a collaborative journalism generated standard. So we started collaboratively. We took that user-centered design research and took it to senior news executives in the US and Europe and Mexico. And out of that, married these with journalistic values to decide, like, what can we show the public or tell the public so that they really know the integrity behind the work we do and the principles. And I already mentioned that. And so one other thing is that, and actually going back to the collaborative, we continue to collaborate. So it's not something that just stopped with our invention. We continue to work with groups. For instance, thinking together about how can we really do this in broadcast in an effective way. So we had a group working on that, and they continue to meet every now and then. Verify, but not certification or regulation. So that's something very different with us and from others. So we verify you, but we don't certify sites, and we don't. One of the things that certification can unintentionally do is lead to regulation. So lead to governments kind of taking the principles and saying, this is what every news site should look like. So we don't do that. We also don't do kind of the like a good housekeeping seal of approval that says this is trustworthy, this is not. You are, by putting the trust mark on your pages, you are showing that you are committed to integrity, and then you have all the trust indicators to demonstrate that. And we do and Dana can tell you, we do strictly require compliance and we check that very carefully. But as a principle, it's a little different than something like certification. And I know you know about Journalism Trust Initiative, about NewsGuard. Those are all good initiatives. They just have very different approaches than we do. So, because it's coming from a journalistic perspective, that's pretty much the only way I can explain it, is that we really do have this emphasis on user empowerment. And when you think about what journalism really is all about, we're trying to help the public make informed decisions. And so we don't say like, vote this is the right way to vote. We say, here are the different, here's information to help you vote. So that's pretty much the principle that the Trust Project is founded upon. And I'm going to go a little faster because I don't want to eat up all our time talking with you. But we did in our interviews, I wanted to tell you about, we had 4, maybe I should skip this. Well, no, I've already started. We have 4 user types. One is the avid news user. And this is across all the different interviews that we did and we continue to do. We see these types. The avid news user. This is Alex. She lives in Detroit and she flies to New York for her job all the time. She's, I don't understand why people do not read the news. You might as well put your finger in a light socket. So she's our committed user. She's cross-checking the news. She is curating the news. Alma here also happens to be a librarian in Detroit, or head of assistant to the head librarian. She wants news that's nutritionally fit. She wants to ask questions about it. Wendy's our opportunistic user. She lives in Arizona. News is there to tell us what's going on around the world, around the neighborhood. But Wendy doesn't have time to seek it out. It's just sort of there when it lands on her, either in the break room or a notification on her phone. And then we have what we called originally the angry disengaged, who became engaged with QAnon and disinformation. And the main reason I show this now is in our more recent research, everybody got more engaged with news. Even Wendy started, the Wendy's of the world started engaging with it a couple times a day because they know they need to be informed. But this middle, these two, I call our anxious middle, because they are the ones who, these folks are certain we know how to assess the news. Over here, they think so too. But here, these are the folks that we really need to help, and they are asking for help because we know that they care about news. But if we don't help them, they are going to become the news avoidant. That's my concern, and I hear this from researchers also in other parts of the world. So this is our opportunity and our risk, and it's a way to grow audience and a way to complete our mission that we really care about, all of us as journalists. And so in our work, these are the kinds of things people brought up as things that they look for when it comes to, do I feel this is trustworthy news? So what is your agenda? You've heard that before all the time, I'm sure. We understand journalists aim to be impartial, but what's your agenda? And then these others, will I see diverse perspectives? Like not just my own, will I see my own, and will I see others as well? So that I can navigate this confusing world right now. Who's the journalist? Is it news or opinion? Does a journalist even know? How do you know what you know? Like, where did you get this information? Is it locally sourced? Do you know me? Do you know my community, which you all are very strong at? And let me participate. So a big desire for engagement. So I wanted to show you, do I have a minute? Sam, what do you think? Should I show the sites? Okay, so I'm going to show some examples and then I'm going to tell you what it means to participate. And just give me a shout, Sam, if you think I'm going on too long. I've got to find how to share again. All right. So I'm going to show, let's see. First, I'm going to show Colorado Sun. I'm just going to give you a super quick tour of these different sites so you can see. Sometimes it helps to see what it looks like concretely. And I'm not going to show you, well, we'll show you as many as I can. So what am I looking at? You remember that question. So this is news, and they take you right to, and I think this is good, like the information, but we see what type of story it is. It's news. What does that mean? This definition is shared by all of our news sites. And you can see that it is also super helpful for just media literacy purposes. And because it's a WordPress site, we see it here. Some of the sites show it at the top, and I'll give you an example. Then here We can learn more about Jesse Paul, and I shouldn't have jumped up so fast because there's more about him at the bottom of the story. And we can click through and get this whole set of information about him. And all this information is structured based on what we heard from users. So things like their topic expertise, are where are they located, languages. This is something people were looking for, and you don't often see it in bios. Coming back here, you can see Colorado Sun has a lot of, their trust bar here. They have lots of things there that are helpful. And then you can go right to their policies and standards. And this is one trust indicator that helps people understand agenda. It is your policies and standards that keep you on the mission of public interest. You explain how you work from an ownership and funding standpoint. You explain your mission. You explain your ethics. Like, this is how we make sure our journalists remain independent. I'm going to show you now this one. I mentioned public news service. So this is, if we were to play this, which I don't have time to do, but you would hear at the end of the daily newscast a little announcement that they are part, in the outro, that they are part of the Trust Project, and you can find the 8 trust indicators on, they give the link. And there are other ways to do that. Here's an example of the news label just shown, like immediately you can hover over it. And it's not just news, that's actually like, we wanted to make sure opinion and analysis and paid content was shown. So those are really the priority, but it's nice to see everybody wants to show that as well. And then we can go, there's their link to their policies, and there they are, including diverse staffing, and so on. Their ownership, they go like they're not a nonprofit, they're a B Corp. So they talk about that. I'm going to jump here. Here's a nonprofit called The Current in Georgia. And here again, we see information. We will see more information. This is a label called Explainer, and we can see what that means right here. And the other thing, this is a story that was an investigative piece. So you know how people talk about, well, I do my own research. Well, we're going to help them do their research in a way that shows like the rigor of journalism and helps them kind of develop that same kind of rigor in their research. So they provided a set of references, and this is a lot of references. That's because it was an in-depth investigative story about taxes. And then right above that, if we were reading down, we'd see this in a different order, but you can see they explain, like, here's how we went about reporting this story. So that's just a whirlwind tour of the trust indicators. These last two I want to emphasize are not ones that you would have to put on every story or talk about with every story. It's just for stories you think are controversial or your investigative ones. So the process is you would apply to become part of the Trust Project. We review that application. We send it through like a group of people, what we call news partners, so organizations, a few volunteers from organizations that are part of the Trust Project, and then we'll get back to you to say, oh, well, yeah, we'd love to have you, but we want to make sure you separate news from opinion more, or you, have more information, you make sure you have bylines on every story, or tell who produced the story. And then you go into a group. So we have an international peer group that you would be working with to learn the 8 trust indicators and what's behind them. And it's partly just explaining and training on the trust indicators, but it's also a real opportunity to exchange with other people, editors, producers, executive producers, how to make some of these decisions, and like, when do you run a correction, or how do you handle certain things? So we go through that, and we provide coaching also, so that you don't have to just rely on the trainings, but there's actual support. Then we do a technical support if you are on WordPress, or even if you're not, we provide the data and the help to make sure you can do the technical side properly. We do have a WordPress plugin, and so we provide support to install the plugin. And if you're with Newspack, then we work with them. And then at the end, we check your compliance, make sure everything's good, help you make sure all your policies are communicate well and easily, and then everybody launches together and shows the trust indicators. What we're going to do a little differently this year is really promote, probably step by step, if we can be in sync. Your trust, your best practices, your policies are now present for everyone to see. Your type of work labels are present for everyone to see. So we're really going to do our best to elevate promotion, as well as tying that promotion to your fundraising activities or revenue activities. And Dana, I think Colorado Sun is a really great example of how that can be done. So I think I should stop and pass it over to Dana. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. So as y'all know from the intro, we were engaged in what were the class of 8, was that it? Group
Yeah.
8 of Journalism Trust Project last year. And just to sort of give you a little point of background, we had embarked on 2 other sort of certification-y kind of processes before and found it to be too overwhelming or too expensive or not actually useful. And so when the Trust Project was promoted to us, we were like, wait, this is actually the one that we might be able to help us with some of our known problems, which was that we were a little bit inconsistent in the application of some of our practices. For example, I know Sally clicked on the biographical information for Jesse Paul. Like every single staff bio that we had and freelancer bio that we had was completely different. So it seems like a, kind of an inconsequential thing when you're building the plane while you're flying it. That's sort of the way all of our stuff came together. It does become confusing to your readers. And so what the Trust Project did for us was help us to streamline, make more consistent, and clean up our act in the way that our public facing act. And we found it to be extremely useful for ourselves. Like how many different places did we have our origin story? I don't know, 14, 8, 4, there's a million different places. So if you are like us and we're very bootstrappy, this may be of particular use to you. For our community, this is surprising to me all the time because I think like, oh yeah, we're doing this just for us, but it actually turns out that people are interested in knowing who we are, how we do our work. Danica served up she's the main person who worked through this process in the past 9 months, said that in January we built a campaign about our Trust Project launch, and that month we had 517 page views of what the trust indicators were and all that kind of stuff, which doesn't sound like that much, but that's kind of a lot to click through on a newsletter, right? And every month we have around 300 people who are clicking on those standards to look. And again, that doesn't sound huge, but that's 300 people who are curious about what goes into our journalism. And the cleaner that we can present that information to them, I think the better it is. And yesterday we were talking about this, what we might talk about today, and we're using one of the about our showing our work fields on there. And it was this insane project that Jason Blevins did where he spent 2 years collecting data about injuries at ski resorts by filing public information requests to sheriff's departments, hospitals, and so on. And what we were putting that information in, and Danica said to me, you know what, AI can't do this. See, this is what is the important thing. Like, there's no way that AI can do all the stuff that we did to make that happen. And so it was an interesting moment because I think as journalists, we just are like, yeah, we work really hard. And sometimes we do need to share that information out with the public. Like, it's not us just calling up and saying, like, how many people had head injuries? It's calling 63 counties and finding out how many people had head injuries, right? So it's been very useful to us. It was painful. The process was a little bit painful for us, not because we're resistant, but like sort of trying to work through all of how do we want to present, and how do we want to make this accessible, and how do we fit this into each of our products, because we use it on our newsletters, we use it in our podcast, we use it on our stories, we use it on our website. And we probably would not have been able to do it without the counseling that we were getting from our supervisors. And they didn't let us get away with a bunch of blowback, like, we don't want to do it. They're like, you're going to do it. And we're like, oh, we don't. So there was a lot of back and forth, but in a really productive way. And I found that supportiveness very useful, both for us internally, because then we could be like, and work through it and be like, okay, well, now we see this. And I just feel like it has been extremely useful to us. It's useful to us when we go out into the world. People, their main question every time I go out and do an event with adults is like, how do I make sense of all, the fire hose of information? And I've been able to say, hey, here is one thing that you can look for, this trust project indicator, and this is what it means. There's been an audit. We, have these rigorous practices, and it's good to be able to say, like, look at this, we're part of a group, and not just something we made up, and we're part of a group. So as painful and long and drawn out as it was, I feel like it was really worth the while. So I don't want to make it seem like it's super easy, because it's not. And that's okay. We have to do this work to become better journalists and better online publishers. So I'll answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you so much for sharing that data. Yeah. And yeah, I'd love to open it up to the whole group. Let me unpin our video so we can see each other. We'll start with Vicki Collins. This is a great question. How long does the process take, and what does it cost? And I think both for Dana and for Sally, if you have sort of ballpark averages for newsrooms of different size and presence.
Yeah, so I'll take it first, Dan, and then maybe you can offer your personal experience. And thank you for those comments. It's really great to hear how, some of our processes really worked for you. Well, and in terms of how long it takes, we've been trying to figure that out in terms of actual time per week even. And we have, like, one of our coaches put together like a t-shirt sizes and how much time it takes each one, which I can follow up with. But essentially, we allow about 5 months for the whole process. And that doesn't mean you're working 5 months like doing only this. It's because you're doing so many other things. And that maybe a few hours a week, and then Dana can, or even less, I don't know how Dana did it. But cost-wise, it does not cost anything. That's part of the principle of the Trust Project. We rely so much on external funding because we really want to provide this as a service to journalism, and also it sort of feels what shall I say, challenging to be offering a trust mark and have somebody have to pay for it. The journalist in me feels like there's a conflict of interest there. So that's why we don't do it. So zero, we hope that we can, when we have the funds, we try to provide subsidies as well, so to even help you do the process.
And I think we did not spend more than a couple hours a week. There were probably some, hinky stuff with trying to, get our WordPress compliant. But I don't know, Jessica, can you talk about that? You guys provided some tech support for us on that, right?
Yes, we did. So thank you, Dana. So we actually do offer help in all sort of the whole aspect of this whole process. As Sally had mentioned, we provide coaching throughout this process. And in addition, on the developer side, we have someone in-house and as well as an external partner that would help you guys. As Sally mentioned, if you are in WordPress or if you are in any other CRM, not CRM, I apologize, CMS.
She's got CRM in her mind.
I know, we're trying to get one, but yeah, so our CMS, so we're able to help you in every aspect, even if it is one that you created in your organization. We actually work with those as well, like any, so we're happy to help. Again, we're here to really push forward and helping you in being able to add those 8 trust indicators into your sites. And as I mentioned, there's no cost to you. It's just really us trying to push it forward, and we have a great team that's there, helping you every step of the way. So.
I have another question, and folks, if anyone else has any, please feel free to raise your hand or just speak up. But I know on this call and interested in this opportunity, we have all kinds of newsrooms from print first to digital first, radio and other mediums. Could you talk a little bit about where in the development of a digital presence it might be for newsrooms thinking about whether this opportunity is right for them? Talk about any differences or considerations, or at what point this initiative would be most useful for them, maybe at the beginning or of establishing a digital presence, or once it's well established.
Well, I have to say that the Colorado Sun launched with trust indicators. From day one, we had those as a condition of one of our early funders, and people clicked on it all the time. And once that funder went away, we were like, ugh. So we went through this whole process of having to, change that over into something that worked on our website. So it was definitely a value that my internet connection is unstable, so sorry about that. A value that we understood that our public took very seriously, and we felt it brought a level of legitimacy to us from the outset. So that's just my point of view on it.
I think that's a great point, Dana, because I do encourage sites, like we want to see some track record. And I think with this group, you're already in a favorable position because you've got Colorado Media Project that you're working with. So normally I'll just be honest, like a lot of times if you don't have much of a track record, you're pretty new, we might say wait a year to participate. But because you're part of Colorado Media Project, we wouldn't be as concerned. And that's where Dana's point is super important, because it can help you raise more funds. It can help you build that reputation more quickly, perhaps, than you'd be able to do otherwise. And I'll just say, I saw a newspaper in San Francisco online. I'm in the Bay Area, and I thought, is this one of those pink slime sites or what? As soon as I saw it, because it was a name I never heard. And then I did a little work and found out, well, no, they're actually pretty good. But that's the kind of question that you raise. That people will be asking, at least the ones that are careful. If you're print first, we have sites that are print first, but not only print. For print first, one thing I would really like to see is use of the trust indicators in more print. And this would be something we would work on. Like, how do you do it so that I showed you all those pieces? How do you do it in a way where you're not, like, every single story doesn't have a huge amount of information associated, but you do maybe once a week or once a month provide a little bit of, or even every day, a little bit of information about here's our ethics, here's how we separate news from opinion. Now, I would welcome those kinds of experiments. Again, with your group, I wouldn't necessarily say that for everybody. And we're trying to do it with more with some of our big international ones that are just now trying, like in Latin America, trying to make this shift to print. And then for broadcast, again, it's a little bit of a work in progress, because you can't put it, it's just like, how do we communicate this regularly and coherently as a whole without cutting too much into your airtime? So, but we've worked that out, and with Public News Service is a great example where they just have 5 minutes, and so we figured out a way to do that. For podcasts, you have a lot more time. Should I grab some other questions here?
Yeah, Aaron, you've got a question about engagement.
I do. Yeah, I was just kind of curious about that. We love trying to engage and not only get feedback from readers or listeners, but potential follow-up stories. But I guess my concern would be, does it just open up like the comments section, which now everyone has shut down because it got to be too toxic, or do you actually get productive engagement?
Is that for Dana? Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe maybe Dana has an answer to that, because you've been here for a while.
Yeah, we never had comments, and we always have had very evident places for people to email us back. So I'm not sure whether the engagement part of it is any different than it was before. So I wish I had more insight into that, but we get a lot of feedback, good, bad, ugly, just like you guys do.
Right. Okay, so it sounds like it's just kind of like a way to reassure people, hey, we are open to your feedback. We're not
Yeah.
just
Yeah, and
telling
that's, I
you.
mean, I think when you go out in community, and you and I have been on things together, we're in community, and I'm always like, what the heck? Where is that coming from? And uh anytime that we can signal to people that yes, we are part of your community, we're open to your feedback, we become more legitimate in their eyes, right? So that, I think that's what at least for us, that's the meaning of it.
Yeah, and the way we look at it, I mean, to all that Dana said, plus one, and I would add that we do part of it. I mean, as public radio is really good at this already. You know how to engage with your audiences, but not all sites do or even try. So what we try to do is help you look at all the different things that you're doing to engage with the public, and then communicate that to your audience on your site if you don't already, or on the air. And it's about all the things that you talked about, building relationship with your community that you serve in different ways. It's about listening to them in ways that might develop your stories better. It's about actually responding when somebody has a complaint or a concern, and doing that correction, or telling them where to go to if they have a complaint or concern. Because in general, we haven't been that great about these things in journalism. We kind of dismiss our audiences sometimes, and I don't think you all do that because you think fresh about these things, but it's a common issue. So that's our actionable feedback trust indicator, we call it. Yeah. And I'll explain actionable. Sorry, I should explain actionable, that name, because it came from a public radio person, and it's because it's not just feedback, but it's feedback that we act on. Like that's the concept. Sorry, Sam.
No, that's an excellent elaboration. Ariel, you had a question about social posts.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is super interesting. But I am curious about, being from a public radio station, how you might use these indicators in social settings, because, especially with like audio is so easily transferred into social settings, and that's like an area that's moving really fast, and users, it's ever evolving. Like, users are trying to figure out how to figure out if this is a trusted source or if this is a trusted story. So I'm just curious if like you're experimenting with I don't know, icons, or just some way of like branding content that's immediately recognizable to users, just what that looks like.
Oh yeah, and I don't think I showed you what the trust mark looks like, but if you go onto Colorado Sun, you'll see it, or any of those sites. I think there was one, I skipped right over it. So there is a trust mark logo that would show on your pages, and you're at the article level. Social posts are a little different because we've been trying to get, I mean, early on, Meta, for example, trying to get them actually to show it, and there were some experiments that they did, and so there are ways that I would love to continue to experiment so that it's coming from you as opposed to relying on the platform. This is like a big thing for me right now. Let's try to reduce reliance on the platforms, because we know there are, they're here, they're there, they're supporting news, and then they're not. So we need to like focus on what we can do. One of the things that we've been doing is focusing on the media literacy side as well in these social spaces. So we did a series of ads on Outlook and on Start for Microsoft, which aren't social spaces, but they were ads that led to the trust indicators. And it talked about like trustworthy news will separate opinion from news, or trustworthy news brings you a diversity of voices. So those kinds of things we can expand out and put in different places. We also ask sites to create a TikTok video kind of along the same lines, and so more of educational, and this is coming from I'm not sure which site or which station you're from, but from your station we are going to tell you about how you can tell trustworthy audio from other kinds of news on the radio or however you're hearing it. And by the way, you're going to hear them on our broadcasts. So that's where we are. I think we can still do more and play with that, though. Dan, I don't know if you're doing anything in social media other than talking about it probably periodically.
We are not, but I was just thinking about, like, is there any way that you could like watermark a post with a, a trust indicator? And I don't know that that's even possible, but it just seems like maybe there is something out there, but it's probably beyond my tech
Yeah.
imagination.
Well, and maybe there are like things we could think about to do. There is a project that's originated at Adobe, and it has kind of a funny acronym name, which I can't remember right now. But it's more starting with images. And the idea is to watermark images so you know the origin. And I believe that could go into audio. We're not, I think it's harder. I mean, for radio, yes. For text, it's harder. For audio, I think there are things that could be done. And frankly, we haven't gone into that. It could be something we could do, or we could partner with this other organization to make that happen for our partners. So I'm actually, I happen to appear on a lot of things with the person that leads that. So maybe I've been meaning to bring it up with him.
Thanks. That's interesting.
Any other questions? I would say we have a couple more minutes, so feel free to take your time and think. But as we're moving into our wrapping up of the hour, you'll see I dropped a quick poll link in the chat. If you're interested in receiving follow-up connection with the Trust Projects team to explore, learn more, apply to receive their support in implementing these, please just fill out that quick poll. Let us know sort of your level of interest. And Sally, maybe share a little bit about what those next steps would look like for folks who would want to take this on this year.
Yeah, great. Well, and I want to say too, that very conversation we just had for a second with Ariel about like, could we do it here? That's where this collaborative spirit comes in, because I'll take that idea and go talk to this guy, or maybe we'll bring our audio video group back together and really think about, well, what can we do here? And it takes time, but it's a way that we all can benefit from one another's ideas and work. Next steps, and I do hope that you consider this, because I think it would be so great to have a group coming from Colorado, because you all know each other already, and it might be a really, I want to say vivacious, but a very engaged and maybe vivacious group to be doing this all together all at once. We already have two that are in the process of application, and we hope to start that group soon. So with some others. So what you would do is let us know, and Sam will let us know what's in the survey, I hope. So express your interest there. If you want an application, like you actually want to start that process, then please, Jessica put her email address. Maybe you could throw it in here again, Jessica, so that you can send her a note and say, please send the application. And the application just asks sort of the fundamentals, because we, I didn't say this before, but we really try to make sure that everybody that's part of the Trust Project is truly an independent news organization producing original journalism. And I have no doubt that you all are, but that's why we have this whole process, is to make sure that you are in the company of other very rigorous, well-produced sites that have integrity at their core. So you ask for the application, then we will review it. That takes a little while. We'll let you know the results, and then we put together a cohort. And we might try to move you along a little faster so we can get you into a cohort if we're making one right now, which we actually are. We're building a cohort right now. But then we might have to stop for a while, and then there'll be a long delay, and because we can only run so many cohorts at a time. So if you are interested, please, it'd be great to apply. It doesn't mean you're not committing yourself to doing it, but at least we know that you're interested, and we can kind of adjust our processes. I don't know if that answered your question fully. Sam, did it? Okay. Yeah.
Sally or Jessica, do you guys want to talk at all about language support for this?
Oh,
That was
thank
kind of
you.
one of the my cool experiences was working with people whose publications were in many different languages. And I know that we have a few Spanish language organizations and other language organizations that might be interested. So
Yeah, Jessica, you want to take that? That's her area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Her-
And thank you for bringing that up. So yeah, absolutely. As we usually, as Sally had mentioned, our cohorts are honestly very international. We have sometimes in a group people from the United States, from Puerto Rico that we're currently having one, Colombia. So we try to embark in having a cohesive group where we can all exchange ideas. And in addition, because we are trying to support you in every way possible, we also offer translation. A lot of our documentation that we do provide, we also have it in Spanish, we have it in French, Canadian French for those as well, Italian, and I feel like I'm missing one.
Portuguese.
Portuguese, yes, because we have a Brazilian cohort as well. So we do have various languages that we can offer. Obviously, well, if there's anyone in your team that needs that interpretation as well, we also offer those during our cohort meetings. We'll have interpreters in the call. So we're trying to make this process as smooth as possible, having you at your comfort level. So yeah, if your organization needs those requirements or just needs that assistance, we're happy to help in that regard.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. Yeah, and I'll be honest, we're a little bit behind in our translation, but we're trying to get, we've got this beautiful new documentation site, so we're trying to catch up so that it's all available in Spanish too. We've got French mostly completed now, I think.
All right, well, that's fantastic. To respond to the question I just saw come through, I will be sending a follow-up email to everyone who registered. I know there are a couple of folks who registered and weren't able to join this. That'll include a recording of this whole info session, as well as the link to the quick poll, Jessica's email. And yeah, I'll pause right at, we have about 5 minutes left. Are there any last questions? Anything, Sally or Dana or Jessica, you'd like to wrap us up with?
I can, if there, let's see if there's any questions, but if there aren't, I wanted to show you where to look on our site, but does anyone have a question? Another question before I do that? And you know what I'll ask, a provocative way of asking that same question is, do you have concerns or doubts that you want to raise? Because that's always really helpful to bring up. Because when I figure we're in this together, like you can help us get better too.
I have one more quick question.
Yeah.
Do you all do or assist with any kind of data collection and collation in terms of audience reception and like the before and the after? Is that part of this process at all?
You know, we don't do that ourselves, but we certainly love it when sites are able to do that because you're doing your own analytics. What we do is when the time is right, like when something comes up that a news site wants to explore, often to do like maybe which trust indicator, where should you place the trust indicator for the best impact. Then we'll find an external researcher and do a study with them. So we did one with, let's see, just recently with a couple of news sites to try to analyze where should those methods boxes go or where should the references go. And then we will let everybody know. So there's different things that we do that we can do collectively. On the analytics, I agree, like it would be really nice to have a before after, and it might be something that I don't know that it would help to provide a dashboard, for instance, like API does for their work, but because it's in my mind anyway, it's simpler than that. It's more that if we could gather from all of you the data maybe 1 year out or 6 months out, that could be really good, and we just never have done that other than individually. So thank you for that idea.
Yeah, and I know the Colorado Media Project has worked with researchers in 2019, 2020, and 22 to run statewide audience surveys. And the last time we did this in 2022, working with Corona Insights, this local research firm, we were able to create a localized version of that statewide survey that individual newsrooms were able to work with Corona Insights and implement to get deep audience data for their particular regions and audiences. That's certainly a thing we're committed to doing versions of every couple of years to help the field keep up to date on audience data. And a cohort of newsrooms in Colorado implementing the Trust Project would be certainly a target for us to make sure you'd have access to that sort of thing. We'd have to figure out timing on that, given that we just did one last year. But I guess to start with, we have this research firm, Corona Insights, here in Colorado that's quite familiar with local news audience surveys, and we can certainly connect you with them.
Great, thanks for mentioning that. And I will say, like I told you about our user-centered design research, I actually originally was hoping to do a project like that in Colorado in collaboration with Colorado Media Project, looking specifically at certain audiences to try to, again, do this in-depth interviews to try to evaluate trust. But since then, you've created this great listening project. So that can go hand in hand what we're doing. I don't think we would add anything. I already told Sam this. I don't think our efforts would add or be that much different. So it would be more like if a whole bunch of you want to be part of the Trust Project, then there might be some questions that we would help add to that work. But we do in other places right now, we're thinking about, well, can we help Chicago, for example, or someone in the site in the Deep South develop these user-centered design interviews that will help them understand their own audiences better.
All right. Well, with that, we are at our time.
Yeah.
I want to be respectful of everybody's mornings. Thank you all so much for joining us. Sally, Jessica, thank you so much for sharing about this opportunity. Dana, much appreciated you sharing the Sun's experience. And all of our newsrooms from Colorado, thanks for joining to learn about this. All links will be in that follow-up email, and we look forward to continuing to work with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for your interests and ideas, and we're excited to continue to try to support the great work you're all doing. And Dana, thank you for what Colorado Sun has already contributed. Yeah.
All right.